So, good afternoon, folks. I'm just going to try this way. I hope that works as well. Can you hear me in the back? Okay. Hello, good afternoon. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Norbert Schur. I'm a professor in the English department here, and I am currently chair of the Academic Senate, so I'm part of the team that organized this event. Welcome to our 2018 Legacy Lecture and Academic Senate reception, which will be afterwards in the other half of the Anatol Center here. We're very excited to organize this event a little bit differently this year than we have in the past. Usually these have been two separate events, but we figured bringing them together would make everybody more excited because you can combine eating afterwards with really interesting reflections on the university. One of the things that we find from an academic senate perspective that is sometimes underappreciated at some parts of the university, I'm hedging here in case I've noticed, is that we have such great institutional memory and knowledge at this university. And in our excitement about innovation, which is a good thing, we all know that, we sometimes forget that we also have this great memory and great experience and great traditions at the university. So this is one of the ways in which we celebrate that aspect of our experience here on campus. So thank you for being here for that. I'm going to leave and sit over there now. Then we now have Karen Kleinfelder, who is the chair of our University Awards Committee, who will talk a little bit. Then we have Chris Warren, who will introduce the speaker, and then we have Marty himself. So Marty will probably start talking in 5 to 10 minutes. That'll be half an hour, 45 minutes, something like that. If you guys have questions for him, he has kindly agreed to take some of those questions. And then after that, we can all retire next door to the other side of the Anatol Center. So thank you very much, and Karen.
Thank you, Norbert. Okay, clap, so I will make this short and sweet. Some of you may have seen a little televised awards program that was on last Sunday. What's it called? The Oscars, I think, yeah. I like to see that as the kickoff for the real awards season. And it starts today, right here in Cal State Long Beach. Because we just don't get to do this kind of thing often enough, to recognize all those people here who work so hard, who achieve so much despite, is Provost here? Despite perhaps budgets that aren't quite as plentiful as we wish they would be, and who really dedicate themselves to their students. As the head of the awards committee this year, it was really a pleasure for us. There are 8 of us on that committee, drawn from, we all had to win one award. I didn't win the legacy, but we had to win one award in order to be on that committee. And what we said after looking through the candidates this year, it was so difficult. It was so impressive. We all said we were really glad we won way back when we did, because we could never win today. It's amazing what all is going on, and it's really kind of inspiring to see what's happening at this university. So it was not easy, but we got a good person to do the legacy today, and you'll hear more in detail from people who know better about psychology than I do. But you're not going to find anyone with more history for this place, more dedication, and with a better wife. She's amazing. So I want to say one of the most important people on the committee who votes in the awards is a student representative. And that perspective really belongs on that committee and has always given us things to think about that we might have missed. So you're going to get your proper introduction, but I wanted to tell you about coming attractions, because the next big awards ceremony will introduce the winners of the other categories we had to judge. And that was Outstanding Professor Award, the Nicholas Perkins Hardman Academic Leadership Award. We actually didn't have any nominees, people. Let's get that for next year, okay? Put that on your to-do list, that we really have incredible people that we could put in for academic leadership. So we want to get nominees. We also will have the winner of the Distinguished Faculty Teaching Award, the Distinguished Faculty Advising Award. Did I say Distinguished Faculty Scholarly and Creative Achievement Award? And the Early Academic Career Excellence Award, which I'm really glad we have to offer now. Academic Senate, you probably already know who the winners are, but I'm going to keep anybody else in suspense. You have to come to the awards ceremony, which will be April 18th from 11:30 to 2 o'clock, to hear all the winners, to meet them, and to really celebrate the incredible excellence, inspiring stories that we have right here amongst our faculty and advisors. So thank you, and let's get on to hear from our true speaker.
All right, I guess I'll try to use the microphone. I'm not sure if I need it, but I'll speak up. Thank you to the Office of the President, of course, and the Academic Senate for the opportunity to come together and honor one of our esteemed colleagues. It's my honor to introduce the Legacy Lecture speaker for this year, Dr. Martin Fiebert. The Legacy Lecture is a tradition where invited professors are given the opportunity to address the university community as if it were his or her last lecture, sharing personal reflections, beliefs, values, visions as educators. Today, Marty will share his top 10 teaching moments. Marty obtained his PhD in clinical psychology from the University of Rochester. He was hired as an assistant professor in psychology department in 1965, which means he's now taught at CSULB for nearly 53 years. He no doubt has some pretty good stories to share with us. To put this in perspective, in the year Marty started at CSULB, Lyndon Johnson was president, a Charlie Brown Christmas made its TV debut, and the New York Jets signed a young Joe Namath. I Got You Babe was also topping the charts, and our institution was enjoying its first full year with its new moniker, California State College at Long Beach. And I wanted to bring a visual aid, so tennis rackets look something like this. He saw patients as a licensed clinical psychologist, a license he continues to hold to this day. He was a contributor to what at the time was a community clinic in the psychology department. Marty was promoted through the ranks from assistant to associate to full professor. In the classroom, our students have long benefited from Marty's expertise in clinical psychology. These classes included family therapy, clinical psychology, and clinical interviewing, as well as many independent studies and thesis students throughout the years. He even tried to take one thesis student into FERP and they wouldn't let him. That was my job. Anyways, Marty has also embodied the life of a scholar, pursuing several streams of research over the years and continually mentoring students wading into the field for the first time. Amongst his numerous research interests has been an examination of the impact of meditation on performance, male gender roles and attitudes, the historical relationship between Freud and Jung, if you haven't read that, I highly encourage you to, and investigations into male victims of domestic violence. More recently, Marty has delved into the world of social networking. So if you're a friend of Marty's, he's probably coding you, just so you know. Some of his recent articles are entitled, It's Your Birthday, Greetings as a Function of Gender and Relationship Status on Facebook, and The Lifespan of a Facebook Post, Gender and Age Effects. His numerous publications attest to his career-long commitment to exploring and sharing psychological knowledge. His research work has led to quotes and interviews, citations and appearances in such sources as the New York Times, KPCC's Larry Mantle Show, the New England Journal of Medicine, and the New York Times. Over the years, Marty has been active in the campus and department community. He has long served as a mediator for student concerns and continues to organize the department's evaluation of tenured faculty. Perhaps the pinnacle of his service to the university was his leadership as the CSULB chapter president for our California Faculty Association, ensuring quality working conditions for faculty and a positive educational environment for our students. Marty still regularly attends performances at the Carpenter Center, chamber music, and graduation, and served as our grand marshal at the ceremony last year, I believe, right? It was last year, right?
Right, yeah.
Marty can also be an outspoken leader when necessary. He helped spearhead the efforts to speak out against participation of psychologists in torture, which was dissenting from the American Psychological Association. His intellectual curiosity also led him to take a close look at the research being pursued by a former colleague and tennis partner, Kevin McDonald. And we can thank Marty for making public what he found regarding McDonald's pursuits. But Marty focused most of his efforts to build bridges and help the department, faculty as a whole, work through conflict as it arose, as evidenced by his implementation of sensitivity groups in the 70s. And Marty can be generous. Just this past year, thanks to endowment from Marty and his lovely wife, Margot, who's here with us today, the Psychology Department has announced the Martin Fiebert Endowed Award for Teaching Excellence, which will recognize teaching excellence in psychology professors through exemplary teaching evaluations. On a personal note, Marty is someone I consider to be a mentor. Marty was the first faculty member in psychology to invite me to dinner at his house. I think he really just needed a new tennis partner. But we've played tennis for over 10 years now, and we are rarely beaten when playing on the same team. And for you tennis fans, we even have a perfect set at one point. Some of you may know what that means.
Golden set.
Golden set, sorry. I don't even know what that means. It was only once. When we weren't playing tennis, we were working with students in our research lab on social networking, where Marty served as an example of student mentorship, demonstrating passion for their ideas as well as his own. And I know how much he values serving the community within the university and beyond its 323 acres, as he is always explaining the latest NPR story to me. But why I think Marty became such a natural mentor for me, and probably more of a father than I ever knew, was his dedication to me, our students, and yes, tennis. He is delivering this legacy lecture today due to his 53 years of dedication to our great institution. And please help me welcome our speaker, my good friend and mentor, Marty Fiebert.
Great, thank you. This one? Okay, well, thank you, Chris. And I don't think, you can all hear me in the back there, right? Yeah, that's fine, okay. And thank Dave for nominating me, I appreciate that. It's not going to be about my teaching. It's going to be about my experience here. So there's going to be a lot of different things. As people know, I've been here a long time, so I decided to choose some of the highlights of things that had some impact on my journey here. And okay, so I just want to do a little sort of contextualization. There was a British philosopher, Isaiah Berlin, and one of the things that Isaiah Berlin talked about was looking at philosophers who were either foxes or hedgehogs. Now, foxes do a lot of different things. They learn a lot about different things, and hedgehogs know about one great thing. So universities tend to hire hedgehogs, and I'm telling you that I'm a fox, as you'll see from all the things I'll be talking about. Okay. And if you want to see some of the articles, they can be downloaded from ResearchGate, and they're there. All right, so next. All right, I'm starting off. This is more or less chronological, even though this picture isn't. The story is. In 1966, after my first year here, I was working in psychology, and one of my colleagues, Joe White, some of you know Joe, he passed away last year, but was an important figure in black psychology and at the University of Irvine, but he started here and had a big impact in our department. Anyhow, by 1966, Joe got a grant from the LA school system because of the Watts Rebellion riot at the time, and the money was going to be used to hire group leaders to talk to administrators and teachers. And it looked pretty interesting to me. I asked Joe whether I could join him. He actually had hired people already, but I volunteered. And I went down to I guess it was Adams School every Saturday with Joe. After I did it once, he said, "You work out well here, I'm going to hire you," and I started working with teachers. Now, I'm 26 years old, and I'm working with teachers and administrators, but the thing I learned was it wasn't that important to talk about issues per se, but to talk about yourself. And it sort of got me into this humanistic approach of dealing with feelings and encounter groups and sensitivity training, and it was seminal in the way I started to teach and work. So, I'm going to get next. Next? Is this next is here. All right. I got it. Okay. So from that experience, I started to work, as I said, with sensitivity training. I published a paper on sensitivity training. I began to rethink education rather than just lecturing to people. I started to realize we can do things in classrooms that had to do with personal growth, talking about ourselves, designing projects that people would learn through experience. Wrote a paper about that. Taught class in sensitivity training. And then incorporated, as many of you know, a strong experiential component in what I do. So in my clinical classes, in my family therapy class, there's a lot of opportunities for people to share themselves, learn by experience, and do some counseling that way. Okay. Second event. Again, old history for most of you, but I remember it pretty clearly. In the spring of 1967, we had a big controversy on campus. There was an art student in Bill Spada, who was a sculptor, and he put together a collection of figures. They were large wax figures that in sexual positions. Okay. It was very controversial. The art department was supporting him, but the administration was freaking out. Carl McIntosh, who was president, was very worried. Glenn Dumpke, who was the chancellor, said that these cannot be shown. It was, as I said, very controversial. So my friend Raphael Hansen, many of you know Raphael, who was very much into civil liberties, said, Marty, we got to save this. And there are faculty who are going to save it. What he did, and he got me involved, was to steal the sculptures, put them in faculty offices. And so I come to my job one day, and there's this huge male figure with a large erection. Okay, so that's what I remember. All right. Now it turns out that Bill Spada is here. He's joining us. Bill, raise a hand. Okay. I think his art is vindicated. The times have changed. We're willing to deal with not only was it sexual, but it really was political. Okay, so it was a very important thing, and I'm hoping that maybe with some connections with the art department of the museum, there might be a willingness to talk about that issue and draw on his experience. Okay. I woke up another day and they were gone. I think the administration worked out that they were going to give Bill his MA degree, but they were never going to show the artwork. And that's the sad part of it. But, people were arrested. 34 people were arrested on campus because of this, faculty and students. It was, again, and the only way you can find out, you can't Google it and find out. I went to the archives of the 49er newspaper, and that's where you can find it in the 1967, 1968 archives. All right, so what impact it had for me, I became, politically active in the psych department. There was a whole move at the time, again, nobody knows about that now, but there was student power. Students were had voting rights on all committees for about 5 years. I think things changed in the early 70s. And then I continued to be somewhat active in the university and certainly with the faculty union, and as Chris mentioned, I was CFA president for a term. All right, my adventures in transpersonal psychology. Again, an area that many of you may not be as involved in as I am, but I became interested in transpersonal psychology in 1970, was studied yoga, meditation, worked with a variety of Eastern and Western approaches, different teachers, taught classes in the psychology of meditation, altered states of consciousness, published a number of articles, and even to this day, and so my students are here, we do a short meditation at the beginning of a semester, and then I do a volunteer meditation group throughout the semester for students who are interested in that. And these are two people who came to my class who might be known to people beyond the university. Ralph Metzner, who was very important in the transpersonal area. He worked with Tim Leary and Ram Dass at Harvard. And Gene Houston, who's a very charismatic, important speaker who was president of the Transpersonal and Humanistic Psychology. I think the next thing is one of my cartoon favorites, okay? Can't see it in the back, but it says, "Of course I hope to find gold, but my real goal is spiritual growth and inner peace." And this one is cosmology. Well, you want Swami Katra, 2 mountains over. I only discuss existentialism and business management. Okay. All right. Moving a little further in time, in the late 70s, I had 2 students in my class who were interested in astrology. So we did some research, some empirical research, that was, important in a way. We collected some data showing that there was a relationship between aggression and where the Mars was in your chart. Okay, so as I studied that, I came across the work of Michel and Francois Gauguelin, who are French psychologists, pretty famous in the field, and they were not traditional astrologers, but empirical researchers. And they introduced me to Hans Eysenck, again, very well known in psychology, maybe one of the 2 or 3 most important names in 20th century psychology. So I was instrumental in having CSULB host a research conference on astrology. And Eysenck came and Gauguelin came, and that's who's pictured here. And we videotaped it, just like we're videotaping now, and it's in the library someplace. So if you're interested, you can sort of check that out. All right, psychoanalysis. I was teaching personality in the, I think it was in the early 80s, and I had a student who said to me, "Have you read the Freud-Jung letters?" And I hadn't, and I was, surprised that she had, but she encouraged me, and I got a copy, and I started reading them, and I was kind of blown away because they were so interesting about the history of their relationship, their personal relationship, and things that you wouldn't expect in an ordinary letter. They were long letters, like 3-4 pages each letter, and they exchanged something like 600 letters between them over a 10-year period. Really, intense. So I said, there's a book here. There's something I gotta pull this all together because the Freud-Jung relationship is so fascinating. I mean, some things, but as you sort of examine the letters, you'd find out other things. And so I was ready to. I'm starting to write it, and then John Kerr publishes a book. A Most Dangerous Method in 1993. And I said, that's the book I was going to write. It was a wonderful book. So I gave up, but what I ended up doing was publishing a paper, which I like because it sort of summarizes the key things, called Sex, Lies, and Letters. So that was part of it. Now, as a spin-off, I was also looking at Freud's correspondence with other people, and he had a very acrimonious relationship with Alfred Adler, founder of individual psychology. So I started to look at, not so much that he and Adler corresponded, but he talked about Adler all the time to Jung, and he talked about Adler all the time to Ferenczi, his other colleague, and usually in a pretty negative way. So I was pulling that together, and then something happened that I came across a footnote to some article I was reading, and it turns out that the Library of Congress just got a trove of letters that nobody has ever seen before. I wrote to them, they sent them to me, and it was letters that Adler had written to Freud, okay. And they must have sort of got buried because of World War II, and then a relative unearthed them, and before the person died, they became in public sphere. So I had those letters translated. Fortunately, that semester, I had 2 students who were exchange students from Germany. So I had them independently write out what was in the letters, and so I had a pretty good idea what was in there. And I ended up publishing that article in the premier Adlerian journal, Individual Psychology. Okay. I was surprised because a lot of it is pretty negative about Adler, but they were, times have changed, and they were able to accept and do that. Okay, so the 2 things that I thought were quite interesting in that trove was all the textbooks say that Freud and Adler got together in 1905 when Freud started having conferences in his house. But there was a letter that Adler wrote to Freud in 1899, 6 years earlier, so I thought that was sort of interesting. But the one that really is the important one is that Adler always said that his ideas were independent. Freud had no influence on him. He was, standing up for his own theory, independent of psychoanalysis. So he writes a letter to Freud asking for a recommendation. He's applying for a job, and he writes in the letter, Dr. Freud, you are my mentor. You have taught me everything I know. So I thought that was fascinating stuff. Okay. All right. The other thing that I thought was really cute is that in 1911, there was a Weimar conference, one of the first psychoanalytic conferences. And you can't see it too well, but here's Freud over here, and here's Adler over here. Highlight Freud, Adler. Okay. Now, we know that Freud was 5'6" tall, and Jung was 6'4". So what's happening here? Jung looks like he's. So what I figured out, and again, it's a speculation. I published a paper speculating about the posing of Freud, is that Freud's standing on a box, and Jung is crouching over. Okay. And that Jung, who was president, sort of set that up to sort of make Freud look important. But, he says privately, someday I will be more important than Freud. Okay. So, again, one of my favorite cartoons here. Psychoanalysis, it says, he's still in therapy. Okay. All right. Gender journey, a lot of stuff I've been involved with that. I read Herb Goldberg's Hazards of Being Male in the early 80s, and then I developed a course. Actually, one of our colleagues, Jack Nygaard, was interested in that area. He gave me a lot of material that he had used as a special topics class, and I developed a class that I taught for about 10 years called The Psychology of Male Roles. Became active in the men's movement, and the academic approach to research in male issues, and published a number of articles. Okay. And then one of my articles, Teaching Male Roles, 5 classroom exercises, which included things like having people reverse roles in gender. Okay, so somebody who is male what would it be like if they were female, and vice versa, and other exercises like that. Okay. Okay, and then in 1997, well, in the early 90s, I was on a TV show, a local TV show, and which was dealing with domestic violence, and most of the participants were women who were either a district attorney, therapist, a victim of domestic violence, a nurse, and me. And I mentioned there that there's some research that shows that there's male victims of domestic violence that are, the numbers were pretty high. They didn't believe that. And so I ended up putting together an annotated bibliography, which from 1997 to, I think, 2014, I kept revising. And the most recent edition, 2013, and the most recent edition shows that 343 scholarly articles indicate that there's gender parity in domestic abuse, intimate partner violence. Okay. Okay, and this at this conference organized at WPA, so male issues. Again, this is Herb Goldberg. We got to be friends, found out that we actually went to the same high school. So we talked about our high school days. Warren Farrell, who's an important figure in the field. He just wrote a book called The Boy Crisis. I think it's pretty interesting. Harry Broad, who's a pro-feminist male, and he's a scholar. And myself, and I forget who this other person is. Okay. All right, Black-Jewish relations. I was watching C-SPAN, and I noticed a number of black intellectuals discussing current issues, and they were expressing pretty blatant anti-Semitic views. And so I was surprised because my take on it was, well, the civil rights movement was, you know, there was a lot of cooperation between blacks and Jews, and early history of the NAACP involved blacks and Jews, etc. But as I looked at the history, I found that there was various areas of relationships. And I put together a paper, Collaboration and Conflict, 5 Phases. Oops. What? Okay. 5 phases in Black-Jewish relations. I did a survey of which got data from African American and Jewish groups and looked at their mutual attitudes. And then on a sabbatical, I interviewed a number of black and Jewish scholars regarding their perception. So it was a pretty involving project that I was engaged in then. And then I was presenting that at an APA conference, and I met a few individuals who told me that they were of mixed heritage, that they were black and Jewish. So I said, wow, that's interesting. I didn't realize that there's a whole core of folks out there. So I changed direction in my research, and I started looking at interracial dating. And I examined some dating behavior among college students from 4 ethnic groups. And then we presented, in the second study, we presented male and female college students with attractive pictures of people of an ethnic group and asked them whether they'd date the person, whether they'd bring the person home, marry them, have a child, et cetera, et cetera. It's pretty interesting stuff. The details, again, could be found on the ResearchGate thing, and I can chat with you if you're interested in some of that. Okay, so I did travel around, and I did meet Henry Louis Gates, well known now for his work with DNA research, but also a real scholar in the field of African American studies, and Malafi Asante, who was so sweet to meet me at the Philadelphia train station before I left town, and we had a long talk about his experiences working with blacks and Jews. Okay. All right. Getting to people who might be in this room here. A major highlight of my 53 years has been the opportunity to work with, I would say, about almost 100 colleagues in psychology and a few thousand students. And here they are. Not all of them, of course, but this is the earliest picture I could find of the psych department. So again, you need good vision, but here's Congressman Alan Lowenthal. And here's my friend Carl Danson, my tennis partner. And here is Raphael Hansen, who was chair of the department, and I'm sitting over here. Okay. And then last year, this was the picture of my current colleagues, and many of them in the room right now. I think Dale. Oh, Dale is right over here. And Dale is in the picture, and Dale is right in the room there, too. Okay, and here's our current department right at graduation. So there's Chris and Dave and everyone here, too. Okay? And then students. All right. So I've been working with students in my clinical interview class since I've been teaching it. But over the years, I've evolved it where former students work with current students to help them sort of model some of the counseling approaches and facilitate their learning. So I put together two pictures here. These are people who worked with me way back when, and Mark Vieira is sitting right over there. Okay, and this is my current group here, and Andrew and Sarah are over there. Raise your hands. Okay, great, thank you. So it's been fun. I mean, you know, usually 3 to 6 people each semester, chance to have them apply what they've learned in my class and continue the process of learning. And it's been a delight to continue to do that. We're doing pretty well at time. Okay. All right, here we are. Story that Chris gave a little preview of that I thought was kind of important in the history of our department and the university. I'm calling it The Rise and Fall of Kevin McDonald, and I'm saying I helped the fall. Okay. So Kevin was hired in 1985 as an evolutionary psychologist. He was selected as Karen was talking about awards. He was selected as a University Outstanding Research Scholar in 1995. So, you know, Kevin was an intelligent guy. He had serious research interests, etc. But as a hobby for him, he started getting interested in why was there so much anti-Semitism historically, you know, in Europe, in various countries. And he started to do some research on that. And he, using his evolutionary psychology framework, decides he understands anti-Semitism as can be explained by a group evolutionary strategy that Jews have. Okay. And he publishes 3 volumes in that area, and then then starts getting active politically and socially around that. Again, a lot of white nationalist groups, neo-Nazis, David Duke and his friends thought that Kevin was really an important figure, and they still do. So McDonald was asked to testify at the David Irving trial in England in 2000. He was being sued as a Holocaust denier, and there was a trial about that in England, which I think there was a movie about that too. Okay. And so once the university found out about, people in the university found out about myself, but others too, there was a whole email exchange on the CLA network where Kevin had to defend his role. Why was he doing it? It went on for a few months, and Kevin kind of stuck with it in terms of trying to explain that, but you know, he was being marginalized at that point. Okay. That's Kevin, if you remember what he looked like. Okay. Now, for me personally, you know, as I said, he came in 1985. We got to be friends. He joined our tennis circle of people like, you know, Raphael and Bob Capchi and others who would play tennis regularly in the psych department. And he didn't know tennis, but he got to be good and he got to be better. And so that was like my personal connection to him. But as he was writing his books, and this is like in the early 90s, he showed me he was having trouble getting a publisher to support them. And he wanted at least some input from academic colleagues and some Jewish colleagues. So he showed me what he wrote, and I was impressed with some aspects of the scholarly work that he had done. Certainly had read a lot, and he tried to draw some inferences from his data. But I said, you know, Kevin, if you go ahead and write this, because of the attitudes implicit in your writing, this book is going to be on the shelves of all the neo-Nazis throughout the world, and you're going to become a hero of that group if you want to do that. And I said, along with Mein Kampf and Protocols of the Elders Design, and it turned out that I was a good prophet. It turns out that's exactly where his book is. Okay. So after the David Irving thing, things died down more or less until, unknown to anybody in the university, the Southern Poverty Law Center was tracking Kevin, and they were seeing that he was getting involved with these conferences with the what we call the alt-right now, which might really be either white supremacists or white nationalists, and he was going there, speaking there, getting awards, economic, monetary awards, and other things. And he was becoming the major white nationalist academic and foremost anti-Semite in academia. And so they outed him. Okay. So they outed him, but nobody else in the department knew much about it because they weren't getting the Southern Poverty Law Center material, but I was. So I brought it, McDonald's activities, writings to the attention of the psychology department. There was a little bit of pushback. People were saying, well, it's academic freedom, we don't want to deal with this, or we're friends with Kevin, we're not going to, et cetera. But, again, over time, other people got involved too, and they realized that we had to do something about it. So it came to the attention of Psych Department, College of Liberal Arts, other newspapers, the LA Times, Orange County papers wrote about Kevin. And after a lot of discussion over a period, I would say, of 2.5 years, a stand was taken. The psychology department and other CLA departments, as well as the academic senate, voted to dissociate themselves officially from his work. So that's more or less the McDonald story. He retired in 2010, and he completed his FERP in 2014. And he is he's currently living in Oregon, and he has a blog that he contributes regularly to the Occidental Observer, which is, for the attitudes of white people in America. And it's pretty anti-Semitic. I mean, most of it is how terrible the Jews are, okay? I just found out that the, Vice News is going to publish an article about McDonald either this week or next week. So keep your eyes out for that. I'll probably put it on the CLA network when I see it, okay? Almost at the end. This is the last of the 10. As Chris mentioned, I've been exploring social media. One of our students put together this nice little logo here. Here is a picture of Chris and one of our poster sessions, and then one of our research groups. A lot of students are into it, so we can do a lot of work. Formed a research group with Chris over the 7 years we've worked on with many students, published a number of studies, some of the ones Chris mentioned. The thing I thought was one of the first things we did was develop a typology of Facebook users. So, I suspect that maybe half or more of people in this room are on Facebook. And so, people are either social butterflies, observers, scrapbookers, social activists, or entrepreneurs. And then we did a study, or I had an idea for a study of how many people get birthday greetings when Facebook tells you it's your friend's birthday. And we found out that single men get the fewest greetings, and women in a relationship get the most greetings. Okay. All right, we looked at the Facebook behavior different than older and younger subjects. Looked at a lifespan of a Facebook post. I thought that's it. It's about one day. Okay, something is posted. You're not going to see anything after that very much, except if someone who doesn't look at their Facebook thing, maybe they do it once a week. But it's really a one-day thing. I looked at Facebook likes as a function of age, gender, typology of posts. People like family pictures most, I guess, would be the thing. And how frequently do people change their profile pictures? That's an interesting area that we looked at too. And what type of picture do they use? Okay. And this is the last slide. Okay, that's the show. Yeah. Okay, so thank you. Pretty good timing, right? I did a half hour.
Yeah, great. Somebody can raise the lights again, and Marty has kindly agreed to answer questions again.
Yeah, Jim. Memorable character. Oh, you know, I had to make choices on who I wasn't going to include for various reasons. But I mean, you know, there was a lot of controversy when Stephen Horn was president. Pretty acrimonious, you know, between him and faculty. But the one that, you know, was both sad and difficult was the Barry Singer affairs. You know, Barry was, again, another close friend who was he was at Berkeley during the Berkeley riots, not riots, free speech movement, came here. We hired him because we knew he was going to be an active thing. And then he actually did it. There was somebody that the department didn't want to hire, Kay Gomez. And Barry says, no, she's great, we should hire her. And he went on a hunger strike. And until the department was willing to reconsider. So we reconsidered, we revoted, we said we're going to hire her, but the administration turned us down. So, but then Barry got involved in other things later on in his career. He became an international figure in the sense that he was teaching a class on sex and was giving extra credit for sexual behaviors. And then was forced to leave, or he retired, and I mean and then he tried to get his job back. He couldn't. It was kind of a sad story, but I stayed in touch with Barry for many years. So he ended up leaving psychology, got a degree in computer science, ended up teaching in China for a number of years, and you know, and then you know he's had some health problems, so that's the last I know about that. Yeah, I think there's, you know, every one of the people I mentioned were interesting in their own way. Oh, the other thing I didn't say, and it's really true, is that as a member of the psych department, I think we've been really lucky. We've always had good chair people. You know, we've been able to, even with the times that we were in conflict, we were able to hang together, work things out. We've had very good leadership. Okay, yeah. Oh, in a certain way. First of all, the demographics have changed dramatically, right? Yeah. On one count, there are many more women on campus than there used to be, right? It's 60 plus maybe, and it used to be 50-50. And then it used to be mostly Caucasian, and then it's now you know, many Latino and Asian and African American. So things have changed that way. But in terms of, and then in the 60s, there was a real sense that you know, students were there, but a lot of times they weren't. They were into rebellion. There was a lot of, it was a counterculture time, psychedelics time, etc. Now, students are much more serious, much more hardworking. You know, I keep getting requests to join my research group. I mean, people are looking at their careers. It's really, and I think the quality of students are pretty good. So I think, I mean, the thing you're supposed to do is always complain how terrible students are, but I think that students have actually gotten better over the years. Joel. Yeah, yeah. Well, what made Kevin so difficult to deal with is that he had another career. He was publishing in Evolutionary Psychology in some of the top journals, Psych Review, for example. So it wasn't like he was just a flake who was, you know, off on his own. He was doing that, and then he was doing this. So I think we took the right decision, even though it was painful for us, is to say, yeah, we support academic freedom, but we dissociate ourselves from this work that you're doing. Okay. The other thing that happened was the administration was concerned that he was teaching either racial views that were were kind of extreme, or anti-Semitic views. So they monitored his classes and they limited his contact with students. He was never a good teacher, by the way. I mean, when he was up for promotion, I went to his class, and it was pretty boring, you know. And he didn't connect with the students very well, and so his student ratings were always low, and that wasn't his forte. He wasn't really a good teacher. Yeah. Yeah. What happened was David Irving came across his work and thought he could use Kevin because Kevin would take the point that anyone who criticizes things about Jews are then clobbered by the Jewish establishment, etc. So he thought that Kevin would come forward and make that point to a British judge and jury. Not much, because nobody was reading his work very much, and that was his concern. And so he sort of did a lot of self-publicity and getting people to read it and trying to get reviews of it. I mean, he even, he writes on his blog that he complained that nobody would tell how actually criticize it. Now, when people did criticize it, there was a number of evolutionary psychologists who were critical of his group evolutionary theory. He sort of put them down and said that they didn't know what they were talking about, et cetera. So it was kind of like an academic argument. The other thing that, again, nobody knew much about is he was secretary of an evolutionary psychology society. He was kind of an important figure there. But when they found out about what he was doing, they kicked him out. So it was a lot of, yeah. Hi. Yeah, I'm concerned about it. I mean, there are positives that the speed of communication is great. You can connect with people quickly. You can connect with a lot of people, but how profound is that connection? How much do people really follow through when they do that? We don't know, but I don't think we can avoid it. That's just the way it's going to be, now. I mean, we're living in, we're living in the Trump world where, his Twitter suddenly becomes what the whole world talks about. So you can't avoid it. And I just think that, it just has moved in that direction. We're just going to have to see how, what the consequences are. Didn't work out so well for people in Egypt, in the Arab Spring. Okay. Yeah, Norbert. I'll tell you a very simple thing, and it's really worked very well for me, is I take pictures of my students, and I put them on a card. So I have student name, card, get to know who they are. That's how I take attendance, But I also, you call somebody by their first name, you look in their eyes, you connect with them. They feel like they're valued. They're not just, someone who's sitting in the class taking notes and trying to pass an exam. Okay. Then I try to create at least something in a class where people have a chance to interact with each other, where students can share something about their personality, their experiences. It has to be structured. You just can't have it open-ended. So I always like to work with structured activities One of the ones I do early in the semester, at least in my intro to clinical class, is I have maybe 5 or 6 students in a room, and one student, the task is, it's a little, it always works out. So you have to say to the person next to you, "You remind me of." And they have to say something, you know? And they do it to everybody. Okay, and then everybody else. So what you end up with is each of you receives 5 or 6 impressions from people who don't know you, something about you. And then people can talk about whether it's true or not, and et cetera, et cetera. But it really relaxes the whole class. The next time the class meets, they're comfortable. They're comfortable with each other, and they're comfortable with me. That's 2 of the things that I hope could be helpful. Yeah. Well, you know, my wife Margot and I were married in 1999, and we were able to take European trips in winter break and in the summer. So I've been looking over our old albums. There's been 25 voyages that we took, okay, at that time. Some of them, one of the things that is, when you go to a place and you live in a place like our favorites were Rome and Venice and Paris and London, you really immerse yourself in that culture. I mean, it isn't like you're a tourist just going to the top sites, but you're shopping in the stores, you're relating to store people, you're talking to them about who they are, what their views of things are. You become part of it, and you assimilate that. You sort of see a different perspective on things. And I'm,
Return to the same place.
and then professionally, yeah, we went to Hungary. I found out about Ferenczi, from a scholar in Ferenczi. I went to Freud's house in Vienna, and you and I, Doug, we visited at least 3 or 4 times in Rome, which was great. Yeah. Yeah, I did remember August Coppola. What was the program he was involved with? Where? No. But he was doing the thing where students would work with. God, I forget the name of it. Honors program. Yeah, he was working with the honors program, right? So early in my career, he hired me to do that, and I sort of got to know him a little bit. And he was a very creative guy. He was writing books. He was doing things. He had all these great ideas. And that sensory thing, I remember it when it was on campus. And then my wife got to know him when he was a dean at San Francisco State. So she was the department chair, and he was a dean, and she knew Augie and also also other members of the Coppola family. But back to your question, yeah, there isn't that much interdisciplinary. I think part of it has to do with, the bureaucracy on campus, and I mean, we used to hire people with joint appointments, but they ended up gravitating to one department, so it never quite worked out that way. I don't know how you can resolve it. There used to be also team-taught classes were more popular, not as much now. Again, if you're teaching 12-unit load or even a 9-unit load, to spend the time, maybe you can do it one semester, but it's hard to do it as a career. So I think that's one of the things that we deal with in the university. Yeah. With more technological tools, how much do we want to have students take classes online? How much do we want them to, watch, really good professors do things like on the Learning Company, where you can sort of see an expert lecture on, I don't know, medieval art or something like that. I think there's a place for that, a certain component, but I do think that what makes the university is face-to-face interaction with students, with each other, with a professor who can guide them and also share what they know. It'll keep us human. If we don't do it, we're gonna get into much more of a remote way of experiencing things. So I think, I hope, as I'm leaving the university eventually, that we maintain that strong personal interaction with our students, etc.
On that beautiful note, first of all, let's thank Marty one more time.
Thank you.
I'm sure you have more questions for him. I'm sure he will be willing to answer them once he's gotten a drink. So